Hey, my friend, I'm Dr. Lee Warren, and I'm so grateful to be back with you for another episode of the podcast today. We've got our friend Steve Mesler back on the show today. Steve was on the show a few months ago, and I'll put a link in the show notes to our first conversation. If you don't know who Steve is, you're in for a treat. Steve is a 2010 U.S. Olympic gold medalist in bobsled. His team was the first in the U.S. to win gold in bobsled in decades. He went on to become a board member of the United States Olympic Committee. He's gone on to have an incredible career in philanthropy, an organization called Classroom Champions, and as a leader and executive coach and just a high-performance guy all the way around in his life. And Steve and I had a conversation a few months ago about excellence and performance and breaking through and how you do great things with your life. But at the end of that conversation, we talked for just a moment about mental health and about how a lot of folks, after they achieve great things, struggle with their mental health. And some people even take their lives. And Steve intimated at that time that he'd had some of these struggles himself. And so I invited him to come back on the show today, and we're going to have a conversation about mental health because I want to make sure that you know that you don't have to be down and out or down on your luck or go through something hard to be depressed. In fact, depression can strike and does strike half of us during the course of our lifetimes. That half of people will go through a major depressive disorder at least once in their life. And most of those people, or many of those people, are not in some kind of crisis in their life. Many people are at what would seem to be the top of the game. Olympic champions, rock stars, movie stars, people who are high performers in their lives. And so Steve's got a great story of being at what everybody else would have thought was an apex moment in his life, and instead he was struggling with his own mental health. So we had just a really vulnerable and raw conversation about what happened to Steve and his thoughts on how he was able to navigate that in a post-depression state and how he keeps himself squared away and what his life looks like now. And I think we had a fascinating conversation. I think it'll benefit you greatly to hear from such an accomplished guy about the fact that anybody can go through a major depression. And so I don't want you to feel alone if you're struggling with this thing. Steve's got some wise words from the standpoint of somebody who's been through it. And the good news is our brains and our bodies are designed to get better when we go through hard things. In fact, you really can't become the person that you're designed to be unless you're willing to go through some hardship. Suffering produces character, the Bible says, produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And today, Steve Mesler, the Olympic champion, is going to give us some hope and tell us how to find it on the other side of depression. But before we get to this incredible conversation, I have a question for you. Hey, are you ready to change your life? If the answer is yes, there's only one rule. You have to change your mind first. And my friend, there's a place where the neuroscience of how your mind works smashes together with faith, and everything starts to make sense. So I'll ask you again, are you ready to change your life? Well, this is the place. It's Self-Brain Surgery School. This is where you learn the truth about how science and faith are designed to work together to answer the big questions that trauma, tragedy, and other massive things bring us. Here is where you learn to manage your mind, optimize your brain, and navigate your life to become healthier, feel better, and be happier. This is the Dr. Lee Warren Podcast, where we go deep into how we're wired, take control of our thinking, and find real hope. This is where we leave the past behind and transform our minds. This is where we start today. Are you ready? This is your podcast. This is your place. These are your people. And now is your time, my friend. Let's get after it. Friend, we're back. I'm excited to have back on the show our friend, Olympic champion Steve Mesler is back today with us from Canada. Welcome, Steve.
Great to be here. Thanks, Lee.
It's good to have you back on the show. Last time, we got a lot of good comments, and people really enjoyed our conversation. We talked about high performance. And the audience loved you. And, we talked about performance and excellence and achieving goals and all that stuff. And right as we got to the end, Steve, we got just a little bit into the fact that sometimes when you achieve something you've been chasing for a long time, it comes with a cost. And we talked a little bit about the mental health struggles that come along with high performance and being in the spotlight and all those things. And I thought it might be a good conversation to have on its own. So why don't we talk about some of your story of what happened in the years following your Olympic triumph, and let's kind of unpack mental health today together.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yeah. So tell us your story. What happens? You win the gold medal. You've been on 3 Olympics. You're finally there on the podium. You've achieved this thing that you've been chasing for years. What happens the next day? Like, what's that like? What happened?
Yeah, I think every athlete and every person, whether you're talking about an athlete or whether you're talking about somebody who has like sold their company, somebody who's accomplished this giant goal that they poured their entire life into, and whether they've accomplished the goal or not, I was fortunate enough to accomplish the goal. And for me, it was literally the thought that I had is that I just wasn't thirsty anymore. It was as if I had been thirsty my whole life and I wasn't thirsty anymore.
Wow.
And that was at that point satisfying. It was as if my thirst had been quenched. And, we had a gold medal and we had all these things to keep us busy at that point, which again is a parallel experience to people exiting their company, in a lot of ways retiring from their career.
Right.
And, so for me, right out of the gate, it was a pretty pleasant experience in that way, I guess, is the best way I can describe it.
Well, and there was a lot of notoriety and interviews, and there was a lot of follow-on stuff probably that kept you busy. But then at some point you kind of go back to real life, right? You get home and all the fanfares died down, and then what goes on after that?
Yeah. Again, for me, it was I was in a good place for a long time. They would call it it's called like a post-Olympic depression. I never really experienced that one for myself. I know a lot of athletes who have. I know a guy named Jarrett Speedy Peterson, who was on all 3 Olympic teams with me. He was a freestyle aerialist. He took his own life a little over a year after he won a silver medal at the Olympic Games.
Wow.
In Vancouver He won a silver medal the day before our races happened, where we won our gold medal. And a little over a year later, he took his own life outside of Park City, Utah. And for me, I didn't have any mental health issues soon thereafter. Mine came much later.
Well, what led to that for you then? What do you think happened?
I think it was multiple fold for me. I think it was the organization that I was running, Classroom Champions at the time. We were 3 or 4 years into like kind of a flat period. Flat growth, flat revenue growth. I'm somebody who's always up on an upward trajectory, and we were flat. I think that was factor number 1. Factor number 2, as I look back on it, was I had this really weird autoimmune issue the summer before. So I can mark my depression probably around January of 2019. Summer, from about July until December, I had this really terrible autoimmune issue that my forearms and my hands were just aching so bad, so painful. I lost atrophied. I lost all musculature in my forearms and my arms. It would wake me up in the middle of the night. My hands were hurting, and I was changing diet. The doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. Eventually I was not eating well at that point. I was literally probably ordering a Dairy Queen Blizzard 4 days a week.
Wow.
Coming into the house. So the organization was flat. I had this autoimmune issue that I had to clean up and change my diet on. Then wintertime was always for me, from the organization standpoint, looking at the next fiscal year. Our fiscal is July 31. So I had the stress and strain of thinking about the next fiscal year. Are we going to be able to keep payroll going? It was basically a small business owner.
Right.
And had those stresses and strains. And then the final kind of nail in the coffin for me was I was just reappointed to my second term on the U.S. Olympic Committee. And this was in the midst of the Larry Nassar scandals happening, in the midst of congressional intervention. There was basically a populist athlete uprising. And I was probably on the wrong side of some issues from the athletes' standpoint. They were right in a lot of ways. Were they right in the way that they attacked me in the media? I was getting drugged through the media. And when you're sitting on a big board like that and you're being attacked by the media, it's really hard to punch down.
Yeah.
So you don't go out there and attack the people who are attacking you. You are in the seat. So no one was standing up for me. I was getting dragged through the mud by a lot of fellow athletes in a lot of ways. And again, I think they were probably half right and half not right. I learned from that, and I'm grateful for that exchange that I had. So those kind of 4 things all triangulated. I didn't understand that you would be aware of this. I didn't understand that inflammation thing.
Yeah.
And how inflammation can actually trigger depression as well. So I had all these factors coming together, and that's when it all hit me. And that was, you're talking about 9 years after winning a gold medal. So it was probably pretty separated from the post. Not pretty. It was certainly separated from the post.
Different issue for you.
Yeah, the different issue at that point. It was what I would call kind of a more identifiable issue to people. It's, reaching a big giant goal like a gold medal or selling a company is a rarefied air thing. So it was probably a more it's probably something that people could relate to more. And I've been able to share that story with a lot of people in a way that they can find themselves and see their issues in there.
I think it's helpful because a lot of us we have this idea that it can't happen to me if I'm successful. It can't happen to me if I'm achieving goals, making money, doing all that. Like depressed people are people who are unsuccessful, aren't making this happen and aren't having a life that's enviable. So I think it's helpful to see, like, here's a guy that's at the top of the world. He's a gold medalist. He's on the Olympic Committee board, and all of a sudden you're struggling with your depression. So what did that feel like? Like, what was the day that you said, I think I might be depressed?
It didn't happen like that for me per se. It happened real fast. Like the bottom kind of fell out real fast, but it happened in a way that I think like the biggest kind of outward triggers were happening where I wake up as you and I exchanged texts this morning. Like I wake up at, 5 a.m. Today I wake up at, usually I wake up at 4:45, but back then I was waking up at 5 a.m. I wake up, I go downstairs, I have a quick snack breakfast, then we have a gym in the basement. I would go work out, and I would wake up and I go downstairs and I would literally just get on the couch and I would sob by myself. And my wife would come downstairs and find me crying on the couch. And then she would so what did it feel like? It felt terrible and aimless and hopeless. And, you still have to get up and go to work. So I was still going to work.
Right.
I was CEO of a small mid-sized organization, which meant that like it lived and breathed off me. I was the life support. I was the oxygen.
Yeah.
So if I took time off, it would die. So, and both I had that feeling at the time, and then also probably in reality, that was probably a lot of it as well. And so I get to work and my decision making was garbage. Like I realized like I was bad at making decisions. I had social anxiety. That is not a naturally occurring state for me.
Yeah.
And I never understood people who had social anxiety. I never understood, well, hey, you're a person and you're around people all the time. You've been around people all the time. How do you get anxious around? Well, I felt like I would be judged by anything I said. I felt like I couldn't handle it if somebody was going to judge me and
Right.
what I said at that point. So that was, my social anxiety was pretty gnarly at that point. And the tipping point for me of when I realized I needed to get help, and my wife was trying to encourage me to get counseling. She was also smart enough to know she couldn't do it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got fortunately, Rhiannon's got her undergrad and graduate degrees in psychology, and her PhD and postdoc are in the School of Management, but she like understood what she was seeing.
She knew what was happening. Yeah.
She understood she understood. And they wasn't really doing anything about it, really. I was just assuming I could fix it. Like I had fixed everything else in my life.
Yeah. Work harder.
And work harder. Just work harder, fix it and change. And the tipping point for me happened. And we had a daughter at that point. Brett was a year and a half old at that point.
Right.
And I was walking down the street in Calgary. It was a winter day, midwinter, and the snow was blowing across the street, kind of like one of those kind of whiteout days in a way. Streets were empty, and there was a C train, which is like the Calgary train, which is like the light rail that runs through the city. And it was coming along, and middle, like between stops, it's going a fair good speed. And I like very vividly remember walking and hearing the C train ding and turning over my shoulder and looking at it. And that was the one like suicidal ideation point that I had, where I thought, okay, I'm 5 steps away. I can drop my backpack. Rhiannon and Brett will be better off. And then it went by and it dinged again as if to tell me, hey, good call not to do that.
Wow.
And that was the point of which I realized, okay, I have to go do something. Like this is not sustainable. I don't want to have to make that decision again, because you ask yourself at that point, like, do I want to live or not?
Right.
And so if the answer was no, and I'd buried teammates whose answer was no in that moment, if the answer is no, there's no more questions to ask yourself. And when you ask yourself yes, you really quickly need an answer.
That's right.
Like you really need to have a reason. If you're going to say, yes, I want to, when it's a real question you're asking yourself. My reason, I think at that point was just because I didn't want to lose in a way. My stubborn pride, my athlete or man pride got in the way. And I'm grateful for that. Like I'm happy that pride got in the way.
Wow. I want to rewind for a second because I don't want to go past this. What you said almost in passing. You had a thought in that moment. You see the train coming. You have a moment where you think, I might jump in front of that train. And one of the thoughts that popped into your head was, my wife and daughter will be better off without me. Like in that moment, Steve, you've read my new book, and thank you for the endorsement, but did you have a second where you got into that metacognition mode and challenged that thought, or did it feel true to you? Like, did you just hear the thought and accept it in that moment?
It's a great question. I heard it and accepted it. Yeah. I think when you're in that state, when you're that low and bad off, there's no ability to defend. You can't defend yourself against those negative thoughts. Those negative thoughts permeate every moment, every waking moment. Those negative thoughts are pervasive. That you have to and your brain can't fix your brain at that moment. So yeah.
What's scary about that? So here you're this intelligent guy, your wife's trained in psychology, like you know what's happening to your life, you recognize that you're depressed. You had that moment, it feels so compulsive to jump in front of the train. Imagine if that had been at night, you'd had a couple of beers, and your frontal lobes aren't as online.
Mm-hmm.
Like that gets really dangerous.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's an absolutely fantastic point. We don't, luckily, we don't drink that much around our house. So I wasn't consuming any alcohol around the depression per se. And again, I mean, in retrospect, I don't know whether that was a good or a bad thing, that I wasn't trying to find some hidden ways to just stop the thoughts.
Numb yourself
for a while. Like the thoughts are pervasive, and I understand how people turn to substances, because those thoughts are really destructive, and they like a grave digger, they just keep digging. Yeah. They keep digging. They don't stop.
So when you have that moment, and the moment passes, the train goes by, you recognize, hey, something's really wrong here. I've got to do something about this. What did you do next?
My wife had provided me information of a counseling service.
Did you tell her about that experience that night?
No. And I lied about it after. At some point she had asked when we had in marriage counseling that we were going to at the time too. That was we'd used that on and off, whether things are not, we don't just use it if things are bad in our marriage. We just kind of use it as a supplement, basically.
Right.
And she had asked, and I had said no. So I, wasn't truthful about that too. I wasn't ready to have that conversation.
Wow.
In that way. Yeah. So then I reached out to the counseling service, emailed the counseling service, and probably then took me still a few weeks to actually pull the trigger and go in. But I had already gone, and I think I also then at that point went to my doctor. So he got it was Dr. Hussein here in Calgary. He's fantastic and was really great. He knows that I'm not a meds first person. I am let's try to do it other ways first kind of person. I'm happy to do the work. I'm happy to do whatever. So he, went in and said look, I'm not well. And we talked through it a little bit and said, okay, he's I know you don't prefer meds. So let's talk about different, things and things you can do. But he's first, fill this out. Just go through this as in a questionnaire, basically it was a mental health questionnaire.
Right.
So he gives it to me. He walks away. He comes back into the office and he looks at it, and I can only laugh. I can only laugh at this point because he was so just smooth with it. He takes the mental health questionnaire from me. He looks it up and down, pretty much saw what he needed to see real fast. He very gently put it down. He turns to his prescription pad and he grabs his prescription pad. He's like, okay, so this is worse than I would have liked to see. These answers are not as good as I would like to see. I think that's the way he probably put it. And he prescribed me a low dose anti-anxiety med that would build up in your bloodstream. And then he prescribed me, he's like, you'll take this every day. And then this one is for if things are really dark and bad, you put this under your tongue. And it was, I can't remember what that one was. I was just telling somebody about it the other day. I'll find out. I'll figure it out. And so, but it was a fast acting. It was a bring you right back. It was a bring you right up. And he did a great job and explaining this to me when that helped me wrap my head around it. And I've helped other people wrap their head around where they are if they're in a bad place. where he would, I don't know if we can do this on camera here or not, but he basically took a pen and took a piece of paper, and he was like, this is the way your brain is working. And he just would draw a circle. And he was like, this is, your brain is working this way. And it is like, this is how your brain is functioning. And then all of a sudden you get this little wiggle in it. And he's like, and then you can get even more wiggle. And at some point your orbit is just so far off that you yourself have a really hard time, if not an impossible time, bringing you back into orbit. And these meds are going to just help you eventually get you back to a steady state orbit. And the way that he described that to me, and the way that he used visualization, and the way that he used just a simple handwritten thing really helped me think about the balance in my life. And I don't know if you've seen that approach. I don't know if that's a standard approach or not. But it was the approach that really helped it click for me. So, yeah.
So do you think, so did you engage in like cognitive behavioral therapy or some sort of talk therapy with him as well? Or was it just pretty much, you need this medication and this is going to help you get better?
He was medication, and then counseling was like talk therapy. And I had, probably dabbled with CBT before in the past for myself. Really came in handy for me there. I mean, the counseling side was, and you can imagine this wasn't a referral. This was like me walking in. And all of a sudden me walking in and this counselor who's going about his regular day. And here's all of a sudden an Olympic gold medalist who is like, if you Googled me at that point, getting drugged through the mud publicly, in, US media, and is doing these things. And he handled it great. And he really went through my history and background, and really just came down to change. Like, I just needed to change, because we talked about, like, on the last podcast, you and I talked about like my, how I got into bobsled, and I just wasn't going to get hurt anymore. And I just made changes, and I just decided I was going to do this. This was the goal. I'm going to decide that I'm going to reach for this goal, and I'm going to make the changes I need to make to accomplish that goal. And once we did that, our rally cry was change. And it was just, we needed to change. We needed to change the way we did things. There's my team aspect comes right away. Like, I needed to change the way that I approach things. And it really didn't matter whether it was a quote unquote good change or bad change, because we were at the bottom. Any change was what we were looking for at that point.
That's right.
And that was really a helpful way for me to do it. And then I started talking to a few of my friends about it, because I had a lot of shame.
Yeah.
A lot of shame around it. I'd never experienced anything like this before.
Why do you think you had shame?
I mean, look, I grew up, you and I grew up at a time when people who had depression were crazy. And this was still 2019. We still hadn't really turned the dial societally yet.
That's right.
And so I started talking to a couple friends about it. And some of my friends had no idea how to react. They had no idea. And I don't judge them for that at all. My best friend, I called him. I remember sitting in a parking lot, cold parking lot where I parked my car near the office, and telling him that I had depression, and he didn't know what to say.
Right.
And then he never called back. But he just didn't know how to handle it. Like, he didn't know what to do.
Right.
Okay, Steve has depression. Okay. I didn't tell him I had thought about killing myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that would have changed it at all. If not, but it was, some of the folks who were in town here that I could actually sit down with in person. And I realized pretty quickly that I felt it was very therapeutic just to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I've found that with a lot of people that I work with, that, a lot of friends that come to me if they're in a bad place, that helps the overwhelming majority of people, whether you're an extrovert like me or an introvert. Talking about this is a pretty material help, support structure.
Yes, I think one thing that happens to a lot of us is we summon the courage to speak to somebody. And if that first person doesn't respond, or they act like there's something wrong with you, and this happens in the faith community a lot. And a lot of the listeners here are people that value their faith a lot. And there's this sort of pressure. Like, if you have enough faith, you won't feel depressed. Like, if you believe You
I can
won't
see
feel
that.
these things, and that's not true, obviously. But that's this sort of mindset, and that creates the shame. But when you finally say it out loud to somebody, if they don't respond properly, then one way some people respond is just by, I'm never going to talk about this to anybody
Yeah.
again. Like, I'm
Yeah.
zipping it up, and this is my cross to bear, kind of thing. And that may be what some of your friends that didn't recover experienced.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think you're probably right. And, I think about folks who, and look, I mean, I carried a judgment on it all the way up. This is in a lot of ways. And again, especially for men of like our vintage, like 40s and up, if not like mid 30s and up, there was no characters on television that were good, cool, fun characters who talked about their emotions, who talked about things like this. And that's a role modeling thing for sure. Need is a strong word. I think we can do better with that. And also just understand where it came from. Like, and I don't say that with any judgment at all. I'm not a person who's out here saying everyone needs to do these certain things and understand these certain things. Like I did come to a place where, and I'm fortunate, man, like I am incredibly privileged to be able to say these things and either A, not feel like I'm going to be negatively judged for them,
Right.
or B, not be concerned if I'm going to be negatively judged for them. And that's a real big privilege because if
It is.
a 23-year-old dude who's a bit overweight, who spends too much time on his parents' couch, says the same things I'm saying, it's not brave, it's pathetic from a societal lens. It's not courageous and these things. So people quite often will say to me, like, you're so brave and you can be vulnerable. I thank them because I understand what they're saying. I'm not here to argue with them. But I would say, when given the opportunity, I don't think me talking about these things is showing vulnerability to me. I think it's transparency. Vulnerability would mean that by opening yourself up, there's a chance for harm.
Yeah.
So the definition of vulnerable would be that if you are standing there open chested and somebody's pointing a gun at you, you're vulnerable.
That's right.
Saying things like this in a way that is, if I didn't go through depression, I'd be a totally different person. I see the depression that I went through, and I think that gives hope for a lot. I hope that gives hope for a lot of people. If you're out there, there are going to be 50% of your folks that are listening right now are going to be going through some stuff.
That's right.
And I can say that you are going to be a better human being. You're going to be a better partner, a better parent, a better employee, a better coworker, a better youth soccer coach. You're going to be better at all the things you do because I think you're going to, if you get through it, when you get through it, you will be. And then B, you can get even more out of it if you really start to unpack and help understand what you're going through right now. And I say that in a way that I think for me, the way I look at it, Lee, is, look, I got to be at the top end of the spectrum of human joy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I got to do this thing that is, one of if not the most, respected or well-known accomplishments in humankind. Everybody knows what that gold thing with 5 circles on it means. And I got to access and experience that amount of joy and pride and all that stuff. And on the other side of it, I got to be one question away from taking my own life. And I opened up and accessed a level of emotion that I had never remotely thought about, wanted to touch on, or anything like that. And what I realize is that, like, that's made me such a better man. And I'm proud of that. And the guys who I talk to today who would think otherwise, I'm like, look, I have more skills I have more tools in my toolbox now.
That's right.
Like nobody walks into somebody's garage and says, man, you got too many different kinds of tools.
That's right.
Nobody
does that.
Nobody does that. We walk around the garage and say, look at this tools for that and that tools for that. Oh man, you got one of those? And that is what depression gave me. And for those of you who are out there right now dealing with anxiety, depression, it can be better. And I'm not going to say it will be better. Like, you have to do things. It just doesn't get better on its own. So I don't like the language of, I'm a big fan of this too shall pass for a lot of things. Most of those things are external environment things.
That's right.
The current political gong show, this too shall pass.
That's right.
The strife here or there, this too shall pass. But if it's your own thing, and if it's your own brain, that is a place where you can work. And I think that I said it earlier, where I learned I couldn't fix my brain with my brain. So I needed other people's brains to plug into. And then once I got to a certain point where I was able to not be on the couch anymore and sob for an hour, then connecting my body to my brain and realizing that. And all of this is to say that I have this image now in my brain that I live with. That is up this mountain, up this hillside. I'm sitting in the valley right now. Up the hillside is a hole. And that hole to me represents like poor mental health or depression. And you don't just fall down that hole, but there's a spiral slide that goes down that hole. And that whole spiral slide eventually hits a bottom. And I hit that bottom, and I luckily bounced it up. And I had some teammates who hit that bottom, went through it. And when you go through it, that's it. And my goal is to just stay off the hill. It's not that I don't want to hit the slide. It's not that I don't want to look down the hole. I want to stay away from the hill.
That's right.
To get to that hole. And I know that for me now at this point, and maybe I'm jumping ahead. And so I'll stop there because I don't want to skip over. You've got great questions on this stuff. So I'll stop there before I get into like how I think about preventing it now.
No, I love it. A couple of things you said, I think the listeners, friend, you need to hear this. Like, number one, this can happen to anybody, and it happens to at least half of us in the course of our lifetime, where we experience a major anxiety, depression, some sort of mental health challenge. You don't have to be down and out for it to happen to you. You can be at the top. In fact, that's one of the times when you're vulnerable to it. But secondly, what you said earlier about getting stronger because of these things, there's a big lie in our society that if you go through something hard, it's going to break you. And the truth is, our brains are actually engineered to get stronger by having gone through adversity. In fact, you really can't get stronger unless you go through hard things. And there's this Bible verse that I love in Romans that says, suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And you can't get to hope if you don't go through suffering, usually.
Yeah. And I believe that. And I appreciate hope in a way that I couldn't appreciate it before too, because I went through suffering. And I mean, look, the mental health research is pretty clear. And it says people that are in high levels of goal persistence, which means that they are pushing forward towards a goal on a regular basis and doing activities to get there, that is difficult. Self-mastery, which means that they understand themselves and their emotions, and they understand where they are, and they're growing self-awareness constantly. And then the third one is positive reappraisal. So they see bad things that are happening or that could be seen as bad, and they find the light in those things, and they find the positive in those things. And that is like an ethos that I put into Classroom Champions work. It's an ethos that I put into my client work. And it is an ethos that I like keep and live with in my life. And it also explains that horizontal trajectory I was on, where I was flat, that eventually caused the down.
That's right.
It's not that the organization was falling apart. It's not that those things, it wasn't growing. I wasn't getting better. I wasn't persisting towards a bigger goal than myself. Right. I wasn't involving myself in something bigger than myself, and not being a religious person, but respecting religion. And that is where like religion does a really good job. It involves you in something that is bigger than yourself and provides you opportunities to like connect with other people. Yeah. And I mean, the data on religiosity and mental health is like pretty clear from on a positive correlate side.
There's a benefit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you stay off the hill? You started to get there a second ago. Let's hear that.
Yeah. I'm intentional and conscious. That I want to be as the best I can be, because that's just the way I want to live. That's the way I want to live. And in order to do that, I need to constantly push and challenge myself, which means, physical activity is a great way to do that. You can constantly try to get stronger in the gym and push yourself on the road running or whatever it is. And that's going to have multiple effects. So I'm trying to find where I can find what I would say, quoting a friend of mine, Brendan McCracken, who's a CEO of a public company, who would say, like, where do you find the most torque? And I love that. Like, where do you find the most torque in your life? So the activities that you do, the activities that I do, will provide me the most benefit in the most ways. So working out in the morning it gives me that challenge. It gives me something hard to do in the morning so that the other hard things I have to do during the day, which might be just sending emails that I don't want to send, or it might be having a difficult conversation that I would rather not have.
Right.
It's having conversations like this. And I think that's like one thing that I would love your listeners out there to understand is I don't like talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Like, it's like, I don't wake up with jingle bells on thinking that Lee and I are going to go talk about this stuff today.
Yeah.
But I also don't like going for long runs, and I do it. And I also don't like, I would rather have a chocolate cupcake than a bunch of carrots, but I eat the carrots. So, but what that does is it reinforces in my brain, and I remind myself that I'm doing something that I don't like, that is good for me and good for others, which then gives me a good positive dopamine burst in that way as well. And I create this upward cycle. So how do I stay off that hill? Is I create these upward cycles for myself all the time where I can get the most torque. I think about diet, and I think about sleep, and I think about not eating that much in the evening, right? Having my dinner and then not eating late, because I know that if I can help my body digest food, and then my body can go to bed not digesting food and other things, it's going to sleep better, and I'm going to have a better sleep. So I'm constantly doing things that are positive for myself. That if I'm doing things that are positive for myself, it is the classic put the air mask on before you put the air mask on others kind of thing. If I can do these things for myself, because the worst thing that could happen is for me to go into depression again, and it will hurt my family.
That's right.
I will be less productive. I will be bringing in less money. I will be less of a present parent. I will be all of these things. And that then gives me pride that I am not doing those things. So that I'm constantly reminding myself. I'm using Dr. Rick Hansen has a wonderful technique, neuropsychiatrist, who has a wonderful technique that helps you connect your brain and your body and the feelings you have. So when you do something that is good for yourself, you stop for a moment. So you pause in it. You recognize what that feeling is. You identify where that feeling is in your body. You connect the thing you just did with cognitively the thing you just did, with cognitively what the emotion is, with then the physical, emotional feeling of it. And you connect that and you rewire yourself in that way. And if you're in a bad place, the more you can do that, the more you can rewire yourself. And that is using your body and your brain to help rewire. So I'm doing that. Preaching to the choir as we speak. So you call me out where I'm messing all this stuff up. So
that's perfect.
I'm doing all that stuff on a constant basis. And also I identify, like, look, I became the best in the world at one point in my life. I can tell you I was the best person in the world at pushing a bobsled from the right side of a sled. I knew more about it, in the intricacies about it, than anyone else in the world, bar none. And I wanted to get to that place as an executive. I wanted to get to that place as a parent. And there's not as many, I can't measure it as well, but by taking that Olympic mindset and then putting into my work, and then helping people put it into their work as a coach and as an executive and a performance and mindset coach, and working with CEOs and working with founders, and putting those things in and really dialing in and understanding that as an athlete, you were always looking for where you got the most torque. You were looking for the places that you could have the most bang for the buck for your activities, your diet, your sleep, your physio, all the things you did had to be optimized. And we live in a world where people are they're saying they're optimizing. You have all these podcasts, and I love what the Hubermans and the Atiyahs of the world have done, but we're missing that optimization is just that, is approaching optimal. And optimal means 100%. So optimization means that last few percent, those last few percent from 97 to 100%. People are using optimization strategies to get from 97 to 100%, but they're only at 50%. And it doesn't work the same.
That's right.
And they'll go, well, I just want that I'll take that 3% any chance I get. And I would say to them, it doesn't work that way. it doesn't work that way. If you're at 50%, the things you're doing to go from 97 to 100, at 50%, it's going to bring you from 50 to 50.5. But the amount of stress and strain you're putting on yourself to try to do those things, you don't have the foundation for.
That's right.
Helping people, and as well myself, like remembering that like I can tinker, but tinkering doesn't matter if I'm not exercising right, if I'm not generally eating right, if I'm not generally maintaining my stress levels right, and if I'm not like spending time with friends and family and doing the foundational pieces to build yourself up. So I think that's the way that I look at that hill. And I feel like I've been on flat ground for a long time now. And I'm pretty sure I can say with pretty good confidence that I'm never going to allow myself to get there, because I know enough of the warning signs now to myself, because I've gone back and analyzed it. Because you did that as an athlete. As an athlete, you watched the video. You watched other people's video. You watched the Germans that were so good. Andre Lange and Kevin Kuske, those guys were beasts. And we watched them over and over and over. And we tried to mimic them where it made sense. And we tried to do our own things. And I've gone back and looked at my depression and my success, and I've done that. And I'm like very content now with that. And now to the point where I'm enjoying helping others with it.
Wow. The listener will know we talk about the mid-anterior cingulate gyrus of your brain. That's the part that when you do something hard on purpose, your brain gets better at doing hard things that you don't want to do. And so that's exactly right from the neuroscience standpoint. Like what you said is right. Like when you give yourself a task that sounds unpleasant, I'm going to exercise because I know exercise will make me feel less depressed, but I don't feel like exercising. So I'm going to sit on the couch instead. When you do it anyway, then the next time it's easier to overcome that inertia. It's less of a Sisyphean task. And so I think that's brilliant. One more thing I want to get to before we run out of time, because I got a hard stop here in a minute. I'm talking to Jeffrey Schwartz, who's one of the preeminent psychiatrists in the world, about neuroplasticity in a few minutes. So he's going to expect me to be there. But one thing I want to talk about, before maybe we have to have part 3, is you experienced calling a friend and trusting him with what was going on with you, Steve, and didn't get help. Has there ever been a time, or was there a time before that when somebody called you and said, hey, this is what I'm going through? And like, when somebody calls you, like, what do you say? How do you help?
Yeah. I think if there was a time, if the question is, was there a time where I didn't respond well? Maybe. I wouldn't remember, because I wouldn't have seen it as something like that. Right.
Yeah.
So today it happens quite often. And, the first thing I do is listen. So when somebody calls you, so today, the first thing I do is I listen, and then I just ask questions, because I know that talking it through helps. So I just ask questions. Oh, really? Like, what's that like? What's that feel like? Oh, that must suck, huh? Yeah. And I try not, I don't beat around the bush, and I don't act like, I don't get scared about what I might ask. I think people get really scared that if they ask the wrong thing, it might plant an idea in somebody's brain. I think if somebody calls you and tells you that they are in clinical depression and it has been like diagnosed in that way, the chances are is that most of those things have gone through their brain. My perspective, and I'm not like, I talked to an expert on this one, is I don't think you have to worry about planting seeds of doubts in somebody's head. You asking questions is going to help them talk it through, and it's going to just show them that it's okay to think those things.
Yeah.
Don't tell them, don't think that.
That's
like saying, that's like saying, don't think about an elephant. Like the brain doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. So I think that those are the things. And yeah, it happens more and more. And the more that I talk about it now, and I'm happy and I feel grateful, and I'm very, very appreciative of, because that was never the person that I was before. I would not have been that person before. And I'm grateful that my friends trust me in that way, or folks that I would consider friends trust me in that way.
Wow. Steve, this has been a wonderful conversation, and every time I talk to you, I feel like, oh, we got to talk some more. Like, so maybe there'll be a third time.
I would love that. I would love that.
I just appreciate you. I'm so glad that you didn't listen to that negative thought that day. The world needs you. You're doing great things. I'm praying for you and your family, and just grateful for your friendship and the way that you showed up on this podcast and spilled your heart. And thank you for everything, my friend.
Well, and thank you for inviting me to do it. And thank you for what you're doing for people. And I'm very excited to see the new book in print and and hold it in my hands and read it and share it with people as well. So keep up the good work, my friend. And yeah, hope to see you soon, and hope to get one of those runs out there.
Yeah.
together at some point.
Yeah, we got to tell that story another time. And you got to
Yeah.
come down here to Nebraska and fish too. That'll be fun.
I would love that.
Okay,
All right.
brother. God
Talk
bless
to you
you. Thank
soon.
you. Wow, what a great talk. I'm so grateful that Steve came back and had a conversation with me today about this. Hey, listen, if you're struggling with your mental health, get some help. Do self-brain surgery. Read the things that I put on the self-brain surgery newsletter every week, drleewarren.substack.com. Listen to this podcast. But if you need professional help, go get it. If you're not flourishing in your life, friend, you can flourish. There's a way to get better, and you're worth it. Okay, you deserve it. So go get better. Learn from Steve, learn from me. Go get some professional help if you need it. But don't settle for being stuck, okay? You're worth it. You're worth it. So fight for it, all right? I can't wait to talk to you next time. On Monday, we're going to have an incredible new self-brain surgery operation for Mind Change Monday for you. We're going to talk about something called Amped Up for self-brain surgery. I'll tell you what that is. It's going to give you a new way to think about your life and get into a space where you can see things coming that may have tripped you up before. I think it's going to be a game changer for you. We'll see you Monday. God bless you, my friend. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please subscribe wherever you listen and be sure to follow me at Dr. Lee Warren on Instagram and YouTube. And to get the most out of the show, make sure to get my free weekly self-brain surgery prescriptions. Sign up at drleewarren.substack.com and I'll send you the powerful thought biopsy worksheet for free. drleewarren.substack.com. Every Sunday since 2014, I've been bringing you my best prescriptions for how you can smash faith and neuroscience together to become healthier, feel better, and be happier starting today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren reminding you to have a very self-brain surgery day.